Hi again, folks. Welcome into UnAnchored Boston. And this week's episode of UnAnchored Boston is brought to you by Our Best Foods, featuring our best hamburgers available at your local favorite grocery.
They a new sponsor?
What's that?
Are they new? They new
No,
sponsor?
no, they're one of our favorites. Our best, and also by Cold Springs RV, your
They
destination.
new too?
What's that?
Are they new too?
No, they're not.
Oh, okay.
But you knock on enough doors, Bob. One of them is going to be the right door.
Okay. Oh, by the way, is this your first week as a Broadcaster Hall of Fame member?
I'm not in it yet.
Oh, but it is your first week as a member of the Broadcasters Hall of Fame.
Well, when I get in, it will be.
Which will be when? Which will be tomorrow or Thursday?
Thursday.
Okay, good. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Can
Okay.
I get a copy for the people that are paying money?
Pay money? I'm paying $80 to see it get in. It better be good.
Cold Springs RV, your destination for all things camping in Weird, New Hampshire, and the great George Gray at George Gray's Lexington Toyota. Now we can talk about greatness and get on with the show because we have a guest for the ages, folks. We've got the one and only Steve Buckley. Take it away, Lobie.
Oh, Buck, so many memories, so little time, between George Foster, Charlie Pierce. You just go right down there. Just this whole genre, the whole Cliff and Claff and all the whole world that was ours.
Well, just to illustrate the talent that you have, you managed to tie up George Forster and Cliff and Claff in a tight little bow. That's good. That's good to make that connection.
What's going on? It's now baseball pretty much for football around the corner.
It might be the other way around, actually. I finished up the NBA playoffs last week. I made 2 trips down to Miami, and I got back for the debacle that was Game 7 at the Garden last week, and took a few days off. And I am literally just sitting in my kitchen den area now after being down at Gillette today. And as soon as we get done, I'm going to write a stellar column. I just lost my earpiece. A stellar column on Ramondre Stevenson from the Patriots. And I tend to think I'm going to be tilting more toward the Patriots because you go where the audience is. And I'm not sure at this moment, and you all know how much I love baseball, I'm not sure there's going to be a great deal of interest in the Red Sox unless they begin winning baseball games.
What makes you think that, Steve?
Well, there was that little episode on Sunday when a guy hit a ball, dribbled to the right side, ended up rounding the bases for what we call in the business a little league home run after the Sox were throwing the baseball around. And as I wrote in The Athletic this week, we've got all the managers now taking the blame. Oh, it's my fault. It's my fault we're not playing better. And we've heard Joe Mazzulla say that. We heard Montgomery say it. We even heard Bill say it, taking the blame for the fine and penalty over the OTAs last week. So these are softer, gentler coaches we're dealing with now.
Boy, they're bad. They're a bad team. It's just
Sox are a tough team to watch right now.
Yeah. Tough now. And as we've heard on the radio, people that usually call these radio shows are pretty smart and pretty intuitive, and they're not that happy with the radio broadcast either. One thing kind of goes together. The whole package seems to, when it deteriorates, it begins to deteriorate.
Well, I don't know. I think if the Sox are playing like the 27 Yankees or the 84 Tigers started off 35-5. If they got off to that kind of a start, then everyone would love the broadcast. And so I think it's like the snowball rolling down the hill, where the less you like the team, the less you like everything else connected with the team. So there is a bit of a malaise right now. And it's unfortunate because I couldn't watch the games with the regularity that I usually do because I was with the Bruins and Celtics. But I would watch them in dribs and drabs, and I would certainly read the stuff the great stuff that all the writers do. And at one point, they had a bit of a winning streak, and there were 7 games over 500. I think they were like 27-20. And I said to myself, well, this is good because however the Bruins and Celtics end, whenever the Bruins and Celtics end, be it with duck boat parades and rolling rallies or blame assessment, which is what our big industry is in sports journalism when the teams lose, that we could make a graceful segue to a baseball team that was exciting, interesting, and competitive. And that would have been the perfect scenario. But then the Bruins lose in the first round, Celtics lose Game 7, Eastern Conference Finals, and then we do the blame assessment, and then we turn to the Red Sox, and they're throwing the ball all over the place. I watched most of both games Sunday and didn't come away very impressed.
Yeah.
Why do we always in Boston have to blame somebody every time something goes wrong? It doesn't go according to plan. Why does somebody have to be blamed?
It is one of the great mysteries of the time, and I didn't invent it, and I'm not going to stop it. I'm just riding along on the roller coaster here, but it's one of the things as I'm sure both of you guys done a million times. You speak to college students, you get invited to BU and Northeastern, and whatever, and I did something up in the North Shore last month. And you talk to students, and one of the things I always say is if you want to get a really good idea of how this business works, let's just say you've got the Red Sox and the Detroit Tigers playing a game. If you really want to get an idea how it works, make sure that when the game is over, you watch Bob Lobel on Channel 4 and Mike Lynch on Channel 5 and back in the day, Dino on Channel 7. But also check with the 3 guys who were at the Detroit TV stations. Way back, it was Scott Wally, I think, before he went to, didn't Scott Wally do some time in Detroit? And whoever, but watch the Detroit TV stations. But also read the Globe, read the Herald, read the Providence Journal. But make sure you read the Detroit Free Press and the Detroit News and the Booth newspapers, which is a suburban chain. Because you'd think you were watching and listening to 2 different games. Because Bob Lobel and Mike Lynch are going to say, "Oh boy, this is what went wrong tonight," and you're going to show and out in Detroit they're saying, "Watch this great comeback by the Tigers. They are a machine, I tell you." And that's what everybody does. Tell me I'm wrong.
What fun was that? Where's the fun in that?
Exactly.
Where's the fun in that?
But I mean, especially the Sox and Yankees.
Come on. It's like your Anglo-Saxon heritage. Off with their head.
Yeah.
Somebody has to be responsible.
Yeah, it's like
off with their head. Where did that start?
I guess it started with Marie Antoinette, I guess. But when the Sox would play the Yankees in those big series, and Dan and I, Shaughnessy would get out representing our 2 newspapers, and the Sox would blow out in the 9th inning, and Dan Shaughnessy at the Globe and me at the Herald, because we were the 2 columnists, and we were assessing blame and calling out villains and like goats and all that. And then you pick up Mike Vaccaro in the New York Post, and Bill Madden in the Daily News, and Moss Klein, the Newark Star Ledger, Michael Kay back when he was writing with the Post. And like, wow, these Yankees, they were down 6-2 and they strung together all these clutch hits. Nothing about the reliever who blew it by throwing the meatballs down the plate. And you reward your teams for winning. You assess blame when they lose. Now there are exceptions when the visiting pitcher strikes out 18 or throws a no-hitter, or you've got A-Rod goes 5 for 6 with 7 RBIs. Then you celebrate the opposing player for rising to the occasion and having a big game. But what I said earlier is a fairly accurate assessment. And it's not just the old-fashioned newspapers. It's you guys on TV. It's certainly the talk shows. Come on.
Come on, Lynchy caught Clemens carrying somebody else's luggage, or he was carrying his luggage.
That was a Channel 5 production, wasn't it?
It was an interview before Christmas.
Yeah.
And he was standing out there with the, what was it? Who called the Gronkowski called them the Nutcracker guys. It looked like they were the Buckingham Palace guards. So
Nutcracker guy.
I asked Clemens one question. I said, now Bruce Hurst was a free agent, and we didn't know whether he was going to go. So I said, all right, Roger, thanks for joining us. Bruce Hurst, will he go or will he stay? And that's all I said. And then he went on like a 2.5 minute rehearsed thing where he talked about it's a tough place to play. You don't understand. We had to carry our own luggage, and that thing just had legs, still has legs.
Yes.
And he had an audience, and he just went crazy, and I could just see him. Oh my God, this is not going to end well. This is going to, and this is going to stay with him. This is going to be like a shadow or like a getting sprayed.
Oh yeah, no, and the thing is, I knew what he was trying to say. He just said it at the wrong time, and it didn't have anything to do with Bruce Hurst leaving. He apparently was approached by players like, hey, can you ask the team, the traveling secretary, because we have to, and it is a pain in the neck when you get, I think it was Toronto, correct?
Cleveland, luggage is luggage.
No, it actually is different in Toronto because you have to carry it through customs and so forth. So he was speaking about an issue the players had that had nothing to do with you or your audience, and it whatever you said, something popped into his head, and he was trying to be a team leader because the players were complaining about this, but he shared it with you and thus everybody in New England, and it became what it became, because what it became to the viewers and to the fans was rich baseball player doesn't want to carry his bags, whereas the rest of us poor schmucks have to carry our bags. And so he meant well, but to the wrong audience at the wrong time.
I agree. And I think he was trying to make a point too. And I think it's a point well taken that was addressed later, that the wives didn't really have a place to go to, when they watched the game and take the kids, they were subject to the wrath of the, seventh, eighth, ninth inning. The people had a couple of pops and just mouthed off. There was no protection for them at all. I think you're right about that, but he took a bad hit for that.
Yeah. And just to follow up on that, there is a family lounge next to the Red Sox clubhouse for wives, kids, and
now
relatives. Now,
yeah.
certainly not back then.
Yeah.
And I mean, back then it was back in Rogers' day, and back in the day when you guys were making millions of dollars a year, and everyone was tuning in at 6 and 11 to what you guys had to say. It was literally just the clubhouse. You'd walk in there and the players were sitting at their lockers because they had nowhere else to go. But now there's like a weight room and a ping pong room and a eating room and a sleeping room and a weight room and all that. And you walk in the clubhouse now, there's nobody there. And so you're kind of waiting around and you end up interviewing the bullpen catcher or something. And they'll bring players out eventually, but it's not what it was. That's good for the players in that they have some breathing room in that stifling little ballpark. Bad for us in that we don't have a captive audience anymore. So
it always fascinated me the relationship between a town and its team and how it differs between town and team. I mean, Kansas City and the Royals, Oakland and the A's. Just different types of relationships, Seattle and the Mariners, just different types of relationships. And it varies as much in sports. I mean, some of the Celtic fans, I couldn't believe some of the Celtic fans this year. Mm-hmm. I thought I'd heard it all.
Well, I mean, it was to have the Celtics fans' backs. It was a sometimes difficult team to embrace. They certainly, as a cast of individuals, very talented. There's no denying that, and there's no denying Jason Tatum is a special player, and that Jaylen Brown is a special player, and in his way, Marcus Smart is a special player. But there needs to be a connectiveness with the players to form a team, and that seemed to be missing. Somebody put a thing on Twitter last week, just a series of highlights of the mid-'80s 19 Celtics, especially the 86 team. And it was nothing but 3.5 minutes of passes that resulted in baskets. And it was Bird behind the back to McHale, to Parrish, Haynes doing this, DJ up for the layup.
By the way, today is the anniversary of the Rambus takedown today.
You know, somebody asked me just last week, hey, you're from Boston. How many games would McHale be suspended for that today? And my response was, how many games would he be suspended? How many months would he been in prison? When you look at that, I'm sure it wasn't as bad as we make it out to be. I was just talking to Max about this. That's what I was talking about. It was Cedric Maxwell. Someone came up to us, and
remember Buck. Remember in L.A. He put on his glasses. They had their Rambus Youth. His kids put the glasses on, and he said, "Hey, there's Rambus Youth. I'm Miss, you know, show me the ball. I'm Rambus Youth." Yeah,
there was that, and then there's also a famous highlight. This was in Philly. It's actually pretty funny. Is that Cedric Maxwell kind of went at it with a fan in the end zone, and you can see the fan throw something at him. And I asked him about that, and Max said that he threw a pencil at me, and that's what kind of started. And then of course you got Milbury and those guys going at Madison Square Garden, and Milbury literally beating a fan with his own shoe. And I tell this to people now, they go, "Oh no, you're just making that up." It's no, this stuff happened. So.
And Ralph Sampson went after Jerry Seasting.
Yes. Yeah.
It turned into a big brawl. DJ was in the middle of it, and Johnny Most was going crazy. You know, gutless Ralph Sampson, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
That's the way they do things around here.
The gutless way they do things around. Yeah, that's something.
But you know what we don't have, Buck? Almost in every series, we had a villain. In hockey, there was always somebody in the other team who was either in the neck or turned out to be a villain. Basketball, we always had a guy that was always a villain. You know, we had, Wally Jones. Tony was a pain in the neck. Steve Nicks was a pain in the neck. We always had a villain. Where have all the villains gone?
Well, there are some. One could argue the problem is they all have the same agents now, and they all play in the same celebrity golf tournaments, and they're all on Instagram together and so forth. So there is a camaraderie among professional athletes that didn't exist back in the day. And Joe Torre, the Hall of Fame manager, talks about playing in his first All-Star game as a young player with the Milwaukee Braves, I think. And here he is an All-Star, and he walks in the clubhouse, and Bob Gibson is his quote-unquote All-Star teammate, and Gibson wasn't talking to anybody. Gibson was there representing the Cardinals as an All-Star, but he looks around and he sees, Juan Marichal and Koufax and Ernie Banks and all these guys. These are the guys I'm trying to beat. I'm not going to cozy up to you just because, that's the stark example. But in many cases, that's the way it was, and you didn't have the level of fraternization. Like I can't tell you how many times David Ortiz, his last years with the Red Sox, I'd be over at Fenway, and the players come out of the dugouts to stretch, and Ortiz is behind the batting cage, and the visiting team is, between the third base dugout and the cage stretching, and one player after another is getting up and hugging David Ortiz. These are the opposing players, and I just, trying to imagine, Jim Northrup or something.
You know what? Maybe Lambert.
Yaz and hugging him before the
maybe
game.
Lambert was the last big villain, or maybe even LeBron James was the greatest hero and villain at the same time.
We still have, A-Rod was certainly a villain when he, maybe not so much when he was at Texas and Seattle, but he was certainly a villain when he went to the New York Yankees. I think Kachuk from the Florida Panthers emerged as a villain of sorts because he was shoving some people around without retribution, I might add, during the first round of the playoffs. But yeah, if you're asking if there's a Rambus, I mean, Ulfi Samuelson with what he did to Neely back in 1991, I think it was. No, we don't have villains to the degree. And by the way, I once wrote a column on how there's different kinds of booing. And you can boo your guy because he's not performing well. You can boo another guy because he just threw a pitch at your batter. And then there's guys you boo with respect. And at the top of that list from me, going back to when I was in high school and college, was Reggie. And I mean, there was nothing on this earth more fun than booing Reggie when he came up to the Yankees. And he came out, boo! But it was fun. I mean, and years later, when he retired, I think he was in 87, he went back to Oakland for one final year as a DH, and sort of like Eck playing with the Red Sox his last year. So Reggie goes back to the A's for his final year, and he's sort of a shell of his former self, part-time player. He's just there as sort of a gate attraction and come home, wave. And I remember we were in the Coliseum early in the season, and I saw him, and I realized this was the last year. And here I am. By this point, I'm a 32-year-old sports writer, beat writer, and it was kind of sad because I realized how much I loved booing Reggie when I was at UMass and growing up in Cambridge, and he was with the Yankees, and now he's this old guy, and I'm a sports writer, and those are the kind of guys that brought so much fun to the game. And if you're a fan who can't identify with what I just said, then you're not really a fan. If you rejoiced with guys like Reggie leaving the game, then you're missing the entire point of why we follow sports.
Same thing with Kuzi in his last celebration at the Boston Garden when the fan yelled out, "We love you, Kuz."
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it resonated throughout the whole building.
Sure, absolutely.
Everybody knew it.
Yep.
You know, Jerry Remy probably told you guys the same story, but I want to say, let's pick a year, 78. So Remy and Mickey Rivers used to be teammates on the California Angels.
Angels, yeah.
Rivers was a center fielder for the Yankees. Remy was a second baseman for the Red Sox. And during batting practice, Remy went over on the other side of the cage and just caught up with Mickey Rivers. Carlton Fisk goes like this, grabs him over, says, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, I used to play with him." And then he goes, "We don't do that around here. Get back on the side of the cage." And that was great. I mean, I would love to see it. We all see the same fraternization, but it's a love fest before every game.
Yeah. You know, that just reminded me of, I think, Bob, you might know this because the late Jerry Moses would do when Channel 4 had the Friday Night Baseball, and you graciously hired me and Jerry Moses, I think Rico, to do those Friday night postgame shows.
It wasn't gracious, it was desperate.
That's a fair point. And on the roof of the Hotel Commonwealth, which is the old Somerset in Kenmore Square. And we were talking one night, and we got talking about the Munson Fisk brawl at home plate at Yankee Stadium. And I was listening, and then all of a sudden it occurred to me, because I had written this, when Munson gets thrown out of the game, who do you think replaces him behind the plate for the Yankees? Jerry Moses, who came up all through the minor leagues in the first 3 or 4 years in the big leagues, and he gets traded to the Angels, goes to the Cubs or whatever, ends up with the Yankees within a year and a half. And like all his teammates, or guys he played with in Pittsfield and Elmira, all of his places he played. And all of a sudden, he's in the middle of a brawl.
Froze. Look at that.
What happened?
You're frozen, Bob.
I'm frozen. You're frozen.
Buck is frozen.
Okay, Steve. You're right back. You're back, Steve.
I'm back.
All right.
You froze quickly when you were talking about Moses worked his way through Pittsfield and everything.
But when he was in the big leagues, he was playing for the Yankees. The Yankees and Red Sox had this huge brawl at Fenway Park, and it wasn't like everyone kind of shoving it. This was haymakers, and this was big time. And Moses was out there, and he ended up replacing Munson when Munson got thrown out of the game. But Moses was, how do you throw a haymaker at, Yaz or, guys that you came up through them, Bob Montgomery, Fisk. I don't know who else was out there. But that's one of those things about when you're a baseball player or on any team, you go to another team and you end up in these fracases like that. But it's like both you guys said, the fraternization is at a level now, and I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's what is that kind of thing didn't exist back in the day.
All right, folks. Steve Buckley of The Athletic is our guest, and I hope you're hungry, Steve, because I want to talk about burgers. You're gonna feel like having one right after this. Grilling season is here in New England, and you know what that means? It's time for a box of our best burgers in your freezer. You got a box there, Bob?
Here, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Lynch.
Whether you're in your backyard or off on a weekend adventure, enjoy flavorful burgers from Our Best for lunch and for dinner. Our Best burgers have been a New England staple for over 40 years, connecting family and friends with great quality food.
There's your Hall of Fame picture, Mike. It's going in the Hall of Fame.
That's right. I'm going to tell a story again for the 50th time, Bob.
No, don't do that.
Well, Buck needs to hear this. They're affordable, convenient, and most of all, they're delicious. Look for the Smiling Chef. There he is, right there. And we've nicknamed the Smiling Chef, Buck, Pablo Bell. And I'll tell you about that in a moment. Look for the Smiling Chef on every package in your local grocer's freezer aisle. For great recipes and money-saving coupons, go to ourbestfoods.com. We love Our Best Foods. We love the people over there. We love the burgers and the meatballs. Okay, so you look for the Smiling Chef, Buck, when you go to your local grocer. And we nicknamed the chef Pablo Bell.
Let me tell a story, Mike. Let me tell a story quick. Right?
Tell a story.
All right. Winter Haven. You've been there many times.
Many times.
Florida. Garden Paradise of Central Florida. Cypress Gardens, Gowdy Gaines, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Holiday Inn, Winter Haven. Check in. No reservation for Bob Lobel. A lot of reservations for, Tom Raycamp and Alan Miller and Mike Lynch and his group and everything else. So somewhere down the list, they found a Pablo Bell. And that's where it was. Pablo Bell. That's the end of that story.
So the real Pablo Bell ended up having to drive to Lakeland for a hotel room because you stole his room?
I apparently am now the real Pablo Bell. Used to be Bob, but my parents were a little surprised. Came home from school. My mom Spanish.
Pablo.
So I can never go through life now not thinking you as Pablo Bell.
No, that's probably not a good idea. I would discourage that.
It's funny you mentioned Holiday Inn, because at one point that was the only hotel in Winter Haven.
Yes, it was.
And I think there may be another one now, but I always whenever I think of the Holiday Inn Winter Haven, I think of Sherm Feller, because he used to hold court down there every night. And for those who don't know, he was the longtime PA voice at Fenway. And he'd just sit there all night and just tell the same stories, and people would come and go, and he just kept going on and on and on. And that's my big Winter Haven memory.
I always said they had players had their families sitting around the pool, and you could sit in the lounge and talk to.
Oh, Stanley used to have Joni and his family right sitting every night. It used to be a ritual out there.
We do it, sure, and it was really a great place. It was Howard Johnson's right next door. They used to have karaoke there, and a lot of the players used to come over and sing karaoke, but they didn't want us to bring any cameras over there, and we didn't. Because we had done enough work for them.
Typical Boggs and those people. I mean,
they
rule the roost. Those guys, they ruled it. Boggs didn't want you there. You didn't go there.
When they moved to Fort Myers, we were flying down to Fort Myers one day, and I was like in row 25, and Buck was like in row 2. And Buck walks down the back of the plane, and he sees me. Now, we're like probably 2 hours into the flight, and he stops, he looks at me and goes, "Hey, have you been here the whole time?" No, Buck, I was airlifted in over Roanoke, Virginia.
I mean, obviously, it was a stupid thing to say, and you've gotten plenty mileage out of it at banquets, and I thank you for that. But the logic behind it is that I am one of those guys that has to go to the bathroom every 10 minutes when I'm on a plane. And it's not like an old guy thing. It was like that 40 years ago. When I'm on a plane, I have to go, because I drink a lot of coffee and water. And I must have walked up and down that aisle 3 times.
And you never saw me.
Like right now, you have to go to the bathroom. So you stop the video, you got up, and you're going to go away for 5, right? And he'll come back in a few minutes, and it'll be.
I'll come back.
It's predicted, right? Here he comes. Okay, welcome back, Mike.
Is this you guys or me?
No, that was you. That was you. You went to the bathroom. You don't remember it, but you got up, went to the bathroom.
But I must have walked by Lynchy 5 times. And when I saw him, my thought was, wait, I've walked by here all these times. Why haven't I seen him until now? So it was in that spirit that I said, have you been here the whole time? Maybe you were in the front bathroom. I don't know. So But that did actually happen. Yes.
So, Buck, let me ask you this: is it as much fun covering the Boston sports scene now as it was 5, 10, 20, 30 years ago?
It's as much fun as it used to be, but it isn't as interesting. And let me explain. It's as much fun as it's ever been because I mean, in my case, I've gone from the Herald to the Athletic, and they, if I may, the Athletic is a pretty good organization, and the amount of money they spend on things and what they pay me is great, and I don't have the same deadlines I used to have, so I get to spend extra time on stories. So in that spirit, it's as much fun as it's ever been. It's not always as interesting as it's been for sort of some of the reasons we described earlier, where like David Ortiz would talk at his locker. And I always used to do this thing, and Ortiz, in fact, used to kid me about it. Like we'd be like 15, 20 guys and be, me and Globe Guy and, Rochi and Mike Dowling, whoever. We'd all be, and then the thing would kind of dissipate and we'd all kind of move in. And I would make a little circle and come right back. And I would say, let me just ask you one more, like Peter Falk and Colombo. Let me just ask you one more question. And I had one question I wanted to ask a player solely for a column that I was writing, that I was going to build a column around this answer, and I didn't want to share it with all the other media. It's harder to do that now because a lot of times they bring them in and sit them at tables, and they hand you the microphone, and you have to, I'm Steve Buckley from The Athletic. And then when it's over, there's some PR person off on the side. All right, thank you very much. And the play gets up, down the little stairs, and off behind the curtain. So that's what makes it less interesting. Now, having said that, I actually had a moment today. I was down at Gillette, and Ramondre Stevenson is talking to 25 people, and he stepped away from the little podium because it was outside. I went right up next to him, and I said, can I ask you one more question? And it was like, to me, it was like the old days. And he said, sure. And we wandered off. And in fairness, I ran this by Stacey James from the Patriots. Can I get him alone for 1 second? So he didn't jump in and hey. And I asked him a completely different set of questions that the other people, and I haven't written this yet. I'm going to write it as soon as this ends, and maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but it'll be a little different just because you're able to do that. And in the old days, that was the norm. If you were the veteran writer, chances are you were going to get better stuff because you felt more comfortable and you had relationships. Now, you remember, I would come down in my early days from Portland, Maine. I worked at the Portland Press Herald, and I didn't know anybody, and the players didn't know me. And I used to marvel at the fact that Joe Gigliotti from the Herald and the late Larry Whiteside from the Globe could just walk in to the manager's office and talk to Don Zimmer and like ask that extra question. And I remember I tried that once, and Zim and I became great friends later on. Years later. But back then I was just some kid from Maine. He was like, "What the hell are you doing?" Like that. And there was definitely an advantage to being a veteran writer who had spent more time with the team. But because of the way things are set up now, you don't always get that advantage. Doesn't play out. And you got to work a little harder to get more interesting stories. And some people can get around that. We have a few people at the Athletic, Chad Jennings and Jen McCaffrey are really good at going up to plays. Rob Bradford is good at it. Sean McAdam. There are ways to get around that, but it's a little harder than it used to be.
I got a question. Who's that? Let's two things. The picture on the wall behind you, is that a team picture or a picture of teacups? Or is when's do you remember?
Oh, that's a movie poster.
You remember the first time we were on television together, Steve?
Are you talking about that movie poster?
No, but I will.
Oh, that's a movie called Soul of the Game, written by Swampscott's own David Himmelstein, Bowdoin graduate via Swampscott High School, a good friend of mine. And that's a movie he wrote for HBO about the old Negro Leagues. And there is a character in that movie, a scout for the Brooklyn Dodgers. And you can look it up at IMDb. It's called Soul of the Game. and there is a character in the movie named Steve Buckley. He was a scout with the Brooklyn Dodgers, and that's why I've got that in my little den back there. And
what about the team picture next to it?
the team, that's actually a panoramic shot of Portland, Maine.
Okay.
That was a gift to me when I left the Press Herald to go out to Seattle. So the first time I was ever on TV with Bob Lobel was prior to Game 3 of the 1983 World Series at Fenway Park. First 2 games were down at Shea. And in Game 3, again, I was a little kid up in Portland, Maine still. In fact, it was just literally 2 months later I got hired out in Seattle. But I was walking behind home plate in the warning track to what the first base dugout with the little door is to go up through the gate up to the press box. And I walked right between the Channel 4 camera, which was in front of the net, and Bob Lobel, who was interviewing Joe Garagiola from NBC. And
of course, it'd be hard to spot us, right? It'd be hard to spot us, the camera,
and I believe Channel 4 was an NBC affiliate at the time. And I walked right between, there's Lobel and Garagiola and the camera. And so there I was, live at 6 on Channel 4. And you said, "Oh, thanks very much for the help." And I believe Joe Garagiola said, "Good evening." And of course, I was humiliated. I was embarrassed. And you know, when you're young and you're up in Portland, Maine, and you're I'm from Boston, from Cambridge, but I wanted to work in the big market. And I said, well, this is it. Like, Bob Lobel's going to blackball me. And I call it, like, this guy will never work in Boston. And then I literally saw you like the next day or later on. You went, "Hey, how you doing?" And like it never happened. And I was like, oh. And I was so,
that was pretty funny. That was pretty funny.
I was so friggin' worried about that they were going to throw me out of the tape.
I remember Garagiola. He was the perfect guy to have on there because he would always have some kind of response like that. You know.
I don't suppose you guys have tape that goes back that far, do you? Because I'd love to see that. I'll take that as a no.
Well, no. The only one that is they have a what they call a blooper reel. They usually run at the Christmas party, and that would be on the blooper reel for that year.
Right.
Wouldn't be on something that they'd save.
You ever make that, Lynchy?
The what?
Do you ever make a blooper reel?
I did. I did a couple of things. Yeah.
Yeah. So I used to work at what is now NBC Sports. Before that, it was Fox Sports New England and Comcast and some of these different names. So Sean McAdam and I worked for them, and we were waiting to do a hit live to tape, and it was pouring out, and they're trying to get ready up in Burlington. They're going to throw it down, and we're just sitting there in the rain, holding the microphones, and it ended up on their blooper reel. It was the Christmas reel, I think they used to call it.
Yeah.
And I think I said something like, "Do those effing idiots up there know it's raining here?" And of course they got a big kick out of that. So whatever.
I'm sure they did.
we had remember when Kraft was going to he had an agreement with the governor of Connecticut to move the Patriots to Hartford.
Governor Rowland, yeah.
Yeah, and that thing was like done deal. So I was doing a live shot from our newsroom with the anchors in the New Haven station because we didn't have an affiliate in Hartford. We had one in New Haven. Now, backtracking, the school board reached WCBB 3,650 and WTNH New Haven 0. They never did one friggin' thing for us. Every time we called up, remember the Celtics used to play 5 games a year in Hartford, right?
Hartford, yeah.
And so like Lobie would have sound, Dina would have sound. I said, "Oh, did you get some sound? The Birds scored 51 tonight." "No, we didn't go." We got the Harvard Yale highlights? "No, we don't have them." So I'm like so pissed off at them. So now I got to do the live shot with them. And I said, "Why are we doing the live shot with these a-holes?" I said, they've stuck it up our ass so many times. They've done absolutely nothing for them. F them, screw them, this and that, blah, blah, blah. Of course, everybody in the station in New Haven heard every word I'm saying.
Yeah.
So now Jack Harper has to go down the next day and do a story with the New Haven affiliate.
It must have gone over well.
Hey, Harper calls me up. He goes, "What the hell did you do to these people?" He said, "I can't get a guy to pick his camera up. I can't get a guy to shoot anything. I can't guy that they're saying lynch this, lynch that, f this, f that. Thanks a lot, Mike." Click, hung up the phone. That was my lesson: keep your mouth shut with an open microphone.
This just reminded me of a funny story that 5 years ago, I think, Lynchy, when you were stepping down at 5, I did a piece for The Athletic. It was an oral history with Bob, you, and John Dennis at Channel 7. And
there's a threesome right there.
The three amigos. And one of the things I learned, I guess I knew it, but hadn't really thought about it, but Dino was telling a story about in the 80s going down to Winter Haven, and that you guys would do interviews in the morning, and you would have to send someone out to the airport at Tampa or Orlando and fly the film to Boston so that they could air these interviews in the 6 o'clock sports. And that sounds like, by today's standards, that sounds like the Pony Express.
It happened.
Where you could, I could do a live interview on my phone now.
Yep.
And
Orlando, you may remember, had a Quonset hut. The Orlando airport was a Quonset hut on the side of the road. And that's where you deliver it to Delta Dash.
Yeah. Delta Dash. That's what Dino told me. Yes.
Delta Dash.
Yeah.
Get the tape there by 11. It'll be in Boston by 3 or something. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. Well, Dino's, you'd have to go back and read the story. I think the story Dino told me was that it was his first year doing it. And the cameraman told him, he says, so the way we do it is we alternate every other day. You'll take the film up to Orlando, then I will, then you will. Well, that was not the way they were doing it. It was the cameraman's job to lug the film up there. And whoever the shooter was, whose name I forget, but I actually interviewed him. He's down the South Shore. He was then. And he said, yeah, that's what I did. And so he's got poor Dino driving out to Orlando with film. And, he's this, pretty boy with the hair and everything and the tie. And he's got.
It doesn't sound like him at all.
And I don't know if you remember, but you told me a great story, Lynchy, about I think Dick Dunham had a camera mishap, and I think it was Ray Bork night with the sweaters, and you missed the Esposito interview or the Bork interview, and you called, if I have it right, you called Lobel and said, look, can we borrow the video, so just for B-roll for my hit and so forth, and Bob, being gracious guy, sort of threw it in the cab and dubbed it over and sent it over. And I remember asking Bob, I said, so if Dino had called, would you have said yes? And you said your answer was, I suppose if he asked nicely, I would have. And so, of course, I called Dino and I said, well, geez, I have to run this by you. And it was good stuff because it made the oral history, because I was writing together all these quotes to make a narrative, and Dino's response to that was, something clever, and then I had myself a little snowball rolling down the hill. I love that.
That sounds like a good story.
Yeah.
Funny, very funny. All right, how do you explain Cassidy? How do you explain?
We got the.
Oh yeah.
Cold Spring RV.
Hop
We're
on.
really good at this, Buck. This is really.
Huh?
You got
Let's hop on the pony and ride.
it?
Okay. Campers. Not only am I talking to you as campers, I'm talking to you as prospective builders of campers and fixers of campers. But first of all, now is the time to see a fantastic selection of travel trailers, fifth wheelers, motorhomes, pop-ups, and park models. Cold Springs RV in Ware, New Hampshire, Mike. The doors
Where is it?
are open and you can likely browse. You know where it is, Buck, right? Ware, New Hampshire?
Yes, I do.
Of course you do. Check out the deals at coldspringsrv.com. But did you know, and I bet you didn't know, that Cold Springs RV is one of the region's largest state-of-the-art service centers? They can teach you if you have the interest in being taught. A new career is looming. Cold Springs RV has great benefits and positions open at their Pro RV Service Center. So, you ever thought about becoming an auto technician? They are ready to train you in the best possible way. Learn more at teamcoaldsprings.com. You will thank us profusely many years in the future.
So let's do that before we get into the Bruce Cassidy thing. John Madden had the Madden Cruiser. Well, Cold Springs RV is going to build a Lobel Cruiser, and it's still being built. But when it's built, everybody that's on the show is going to get a ride cross country free. But you have to bring with you some sports figure, past, present, alive, or dead, that you would like to ride cross country with and have a conversation with. And who would it be for you, Buck?
I'm torn because I've been asked this before, like who would I want to have a beer with, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I always go back and forth depending on my mood or the audience. Babe Ruth or Satchel Paige. Babe Ruth because he lived a very hard, adventurous life, and I don't think we can even comprehend today how popular and how well known he was back in the 1920s. And we all know about his vices between alcohol and women and tobacco and so forth. But he was just such an interesting guy. And of course, Satchel Paige is arguably the greatest pitcher of all time, playing during the days of segregation. And he was a wildly popular personality in his world who was such that he transitioned into the white world in terms of media. And even when I was, he was since playing this long over by the time I was coming of age, but you'd see him on What's My Line and To Tell the Truth and on talk shows and stuff. He was and I'm thinking to myself then, like, wow, if he's so special that in his older age he's appearing on all these programs, like how special must he have been in the 1930s and 1940s? And as some of you may know, as a publicity stunt, Charlie Finley activated him in 1965, and he pitched, I think, 3 shutout innings against the Red Sox, and the last batter ever to get a hit off of Satchel Paige was Cody Stremski. Right. And the last strikeout that Satchel Paige ever had was my dear friend who I used to work out with in the gym over at Tufts University, Bill Monbouquet from Medford. And Monbouquet was the opposing pitcher in that game, and Satchel struck him out. So Bill Monbouquet, a pitcher, got to go through life saying I was Satchel Paige's last strikeout. And but I was always attracted. There was a great biography, and I forget the name. It was a former Globe writer that wrote.
Oh, there we go again.
Yeah, bathroom break.
Bathroom break.
It's okay.
It's only 3 of them. He gets 5.
Who's that? Right. Oh, here we go.
Here he comes.
Hello.
We're back.
Yeah. So that's my. I'm torn between Babe Ruth and Satchel Paige. Is my answer.
That's a pretty good one.
What have others said?
A lot of them have said Belichick.
Parcells.
I'd be driving the bus off the road at some point. I have nothing against Bill, but he's I think a little bit of Bill goes a long way, I guess.
Yeah. That was.
I took Lindsey Vonn, but that she was out.
Yeah. Although in defense of anyone who would pick Belichick, as I rethink that, his knowledge of football history is second to none, and I'm guessing in that kind of environment that he'd be really good telling about the Canton Bulldogs and Red Grange and early football, because he's a student of the history of the game, and I bet he's got some very interesting stories he could share.
Who's the best owner we have now?
I think Robbie Kraft.
You know,
he built the stadium largely with private funds. He's been a solid citizen in the philanthropic front. I think ownership is generally pretty good. I mean, for all the crap that John Henry and Tom Werner have, they did win 4 World Series here and counting. They renovated Fenway Park, and things don't look good now. I grant that. But they also built up the Red Sox Foundation, and not to get
bathroom break again.
Oh wow!
Good thing he has us here because technical.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Now what do we do?
Help.
You're in charge. All right, Buck. Either change them or arrange them. Okay, you want to finish the sentence? The Red Sox have done a good job. They built up Fenway Park. They built foundation. And go ahead, Steve. Finish off. I didn't mean,
No, it's just
didn't mean to interrupt.
that John Henry kept the Globe going, and also Wick Grossback and Steve Buckley because they're local. And the one mark against the Jacobs family is I think Charlie kind of lives here, but they are not local ownership in the grand scheme of things. And I take a lot of stock in the fact that John Henry has, I'm sure he spends a lot of time elsewhere, but for all practical purposes, he bought a place here, he settled here. Larry Lucchino, when he was running the Red Sox, had a place up in Chestnut Hill. I was at his house a few times. Wick lives here. Steve Buckley lives here. Obviously, Robert Kraft spends. I know he's got a place down in South Florida now, but he's born and raised on Fuller Street in Brookline and is as local an owner as we've ever had.
How do you explain something like Cassidy? How do you explain?
It's a hell of a story, actually.
I mean, I think is it underplayed? Nobody really seems to be. I mean,
I think it's getting, it's
getting there, but it's not like really there.
No, I think it didn't get played during the season because the Bruins were busily running up the best record in the history.
It's not like Tom Brady going and winning a Super Bowl with Tampa Bay. It's like Cassidy going and winning a Stanley Cup with Las Vegas.
Yeah, but no disrespect to Bruce Cassidy, but he's not Tom Brady. He's a coach, and he's not like an iconic local figure. And Cassidy never won a championship in Boston, whereas Brady won 4 Super Bowls. So, or is it 6 Super Bowls? I get them mixed up. 6 Super Bowls, and 3 and 3, 2 different dynasties. And but no, Cassidy is great. Listen, the Bruins didn't want a hard ass as coach, and they moved Cassidy out to a team that presumably needed a hard ass, and they brought in Jim Montgomery. And I like Jim. I think it's a great story. He's a recovering alcoholic, and the Bruins took a chance on him, and he did great things during the regular season. But one could argue he lifted his foot off the gas pedal a little bit in the postseason, and I yield to the real hockey writers here, the Stevie Conroys and the Herald and Flourish and Zowers from the Globe, from the Athletic and so forth, that all of them were writing that, hey, there's a goaltending situation here. And he stuck with Linus Ullmark for 6 games and finally went to Swayman. And one could argue he should have done that earlier. And in retrospect, Montgomery is now saying, yeah, I should have had a V8. He should have done that. So.
But it's always been a baseball town. When did it turn into a football town? And will it ever be a baseball town again?
It may yet be a baseball town. I mean, the interest in football has waned a little bit since Brady left, but certainly that 01. Listen, they made it to the Super Bowl in '85. It was very exciting. Squish the fish and all that. You guys were down there. I was still up in Maine, but that didn't turn it into a football town. They made it again in '96, with Parcells and Bledsoe. That didn't really do it, although Kraft had owned the team by then and they were selling out. I still say, by the way, that the 3 most important figures in Patriots history, in no particular order, are Kraft, Bledsoe, and Parcells. And I'm not being mean to Brady and Belichick, but that solid local ownership, a big league NFL coach, and a real true number 1 quarterback, which they hadn't really had since Grogan. Those 3 combined, it was on the basis of what they were doing that Kraft felt inspired to build Gillette Stadium. And but when did it become a football town? It was halfway through that 01 season.
I think I'm gonna just quickly throw this out, and then I'll congratulate you on doing a great job. And I speak for Mike when I know he feels this way. We're happy we're able to make it today in a big way. That Boston is a sports town, well renowned. We're all very proud of the fact that we were involved in sports in Boston in its heyday, in its low periods, in its up periods, in its glory, in its tragedies. But I think it has to do with everybody, not only the teams, the players, the owners, the characters or the coaches, but also the media that served it. That's what makes the town the town. That's what makes Boston Boston. That whole conglomeration. And I'll throw the media people in there as well, because there were a bunch of characters that occupied the seats that we sat in. And night after night, doing what we did, night after night, not, don't break your arm patting yourself on the back, Bob. Just night after night, just throwing a shit out there and then having fun doing it and saying, why can't we get players like that? Just having fun. But it was all part of the whole lore of sports being fun. And,
well, to that I would add, where would we be without Mike Lynch's high five segments and without Bob Lobel's panic button? That's it right there.
Well, there you go. I don't say I don't say that because of those things. I say that we were very fortunate to have been part of those things. So
there was a time, Buck, I'm sure you remember it, where an interview like this and our relationship, all being friends, might not have happened between the electronic media and the print media.
No. You are 100% correct.
There was a frosty relationship there.
Because the print guys regarded themselves as the frontline soldiers who were there to get news, whereas the TV people were blow-dry pretty boys, just there to.
This is where you do that, Mike. Come on.
Yeah, and that was number one reason I hate the TV people, and number two, you had guys like Dick Dunham shoving those cameras in the back, and was it Pablo over at Channel 7 was a big guy, and it like every cameraman in those days was John Hanna. And I don't know if that was done intentionally, but you're there trying to talk to Yaz or someone, and then you get the camera in the back of the head. Oh. And so no, that was not and of course you wanted to get your little one shot and your little one-on-one, and you would ask stupid questions, and we all hated each other. Now, we didn't know then that there would come a time when you would partner up with us and then pay us to come on your shows.
The key word was pay you.
And
That's about time you got around to that.
I hated.
You didn't have to wait to the third paragraph.
And I hated Bob Lobel until he started to pay me to make a 7-minute drive from my house to Soldiers Field Road to appear on TV for 15 minutes. And all of a sudden we were great buddies.
There you go. Heal the world. We heal the world.
Barking dogs, they used to call us. Barking dogs.
But some of it was. Remember Rip Zappa on Channel 7, breaking the egg on his head, and 7 had an anchor who was impossibly good looking. I mean, the hair and he was like, "Good evening," and he couldn't find his way from the State House to Park Street Under. I mean, it was, and he was some guy from Oklahoma they brought in.
Denver hotel room guy.
That was that guy. Yes, yeah. That was that guy.
Oh yeah.
That the ad campaign. We found him in a hotel room in Kansas or something. And yes, and I forget his name, but I mean, that was the wild west in those days. That was fun stuff.
Yeah, it was. It was. And it was tough. I mean, and it was well founded. A lot of it stuff, because some of the photogs were, their manners weren't great, and they were trying to get in position. And I saw a lot of you guys, and that does not tickle, by the way, to get one of those battery packs hitting you in the side of the head. You don't see it coming.
Yeah.
And but we didn't know what else to do. I mean, we had to get Kai Ostrowski or Carlton Fisk is talking, or we didn't know what else to do. You just had to get in there in the scrum with everybody else.
Yeah, and clearly in the mid '80s, and again, if you didn't live it, you couldn't possibly fathom what the 6 and 11 news meant in the market, in all markets in those days. And it didn't go unnoticed by me as a young sports writer that after a while the players seemed a lot more willing to step out of the scrum and do a hit with you guys, whereas they wouldn't do it with guys like me. But they recognize that in terms of marketing and all that being on Channel 4, being on Channel 5, being on Channel 7 was to their advantage because that's the power and the heft that you guys had in those days.
Well, listen, Mike, tomorrow or on Thursday, you'll be inducted into the New England Broadcasters Hall of Fame it's the Marriott in Quincy.
That's right. Yeah.
And it starts at 11:30 and tickets are available. That's all I'll say.
Plenty of good seats still available.
I say that. I said tickets are available.
Hey, we're going to talk about our good friend George Gray right now. You know, if you're thinking about a new vehicle, you want to get out of the Hall of Fame dinner. Well, there's only one place to go. Go where we all go. Go
George,
see
don't get him a new car for his Hall of Fame appearance, George. Don't.
Go see our good friend George Gray at George Gray's Lexington Toyota. We've been customers for years. We know George Gray, and we know him personally, and he's going to treat you right. They're a family-owned and operated dealership that we trust, and you can trust as well. Go see the great George Gray at Lexington Toyota. It's a great place. George is a great guy.
They're right on Mass Ave.
Right on Mass Ave, 409 Mass Ave. Yep.
Yeah, I know. I brought my car there. I have a Toyota. I brought my car there in the past.
Great
they
service.
Literally, if you want to walk there from Cambridge or Somerville or Arlington, the Minuteman Bike Show is literally right behind their parking lot.
It is behind their parking lot. Absolutely right. A lot of times when I get my oil change or something, I go for a walk. I used to go for a run on that bike. It's a great. You don't even know it's there.
It's weird. Yeah,
everything. Yeah, but it's great. All right, Buck. What else you got? Anything else you want to lay on us?
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that the 28th annual Old Time Baseball game.
Oh yeah,
is Thursday, August 24th at St. Peter's Field in Cambridge.
Okay,
and the old style uniforms and the whole bit. And I haven't even announced this yet, but I'll share it with you guys. Fred Lynn is going to make an appearance.
Oh, really?
As you know, we've had Roger Clemens,
Yep.
Pedro Martinez,
Yep.
Lou Merlone. Has been a great friend of our game over the years. We've had Tim Wakefield, Ray Bork, Jim Longborg. Jim Longborg at age 73 pitched an inning and miraculously pitched a shutout inning thanks to, frankly, a couple of line drives hit at people, which came in handy. Fred's just had the double knee replacement, so he will not be patrolling center field at St. Peter's Field, but he will be there. The game will be a benefit for the Boston Home, which is on Dot Ave in Dorchester. It is a treatment facility for adult patients with multiple sclerosis. And the reason we chose them is because a kid from Arlington via WPI, a very good pitcher, got diagnosed with MS while he was in college. And it kind of put the skids on his college career. He still pitches in the inner city league, but he might have had better luck if he had full health. But he has MS, and he's going to be sort of the point person. His name's Aiden Freeberg, and from Arlington via WPS, and we're doing it as a fundraiser for the Boston Home with Aiden Freeberg, who's going to pitch an inning in the game again this year. And again, if you've never been there, we've got 60 players, mostly college players, a few older, some younger, and we have 60 old-time flannel uniforms, Negro League uniforms, Brooklyn Dodgers Boston Braves, and they're 100% wool. We use them once a year just for the game, and they're the atmosphere is old period music, 6 umpires, the crowd along the field is mostly festival seating. It's a very fun event. I am one of about 50 people who puts this game on, and the difference being I get to talk about it with you nice people. So it's a very fun event.
What year are you in now?
I believe this is our 28th. We missed 1 year. We missed 1 year because of the pandemic in 20.
Oh.
And the city wouldn't let us have the game that year. We did have a bounce back game in 21, but we did not do it as a fundraiser. We just wanted to get the game back up on its feet. And so we had the game, and then last year was more in keeping with what the game, and this year will be all the bells and whistles. This year will be a big game. August 24th, 7:00, St. Peter's Field.
Awesome. It's a great time. Owie, what do you got?
Just trying to check out one last picture that I can't find. So I want to say it was a picture of Thurman Munson going into Fisk, and the whole story was that Jerry Moses was that was the fact of the day right there.
Yeah. Well, Jerry had kind of a what's the Tom Hanks movie where he appears in all these famous scenes? Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
And Jerry Moses was a member of the '67 Red Sox, even though he never appeared in a game.
Okay,
He got called up late in the season, and he hung around for 3 weeks. And Dick Williams, he mostly warmed up pitchers in the bullpen, but he was on the active roster, and he got an American League pennant ring, and he is considered, for bookkeeping purposes, a member of the '67 Red Sox. So he Forrest Gumped that, and then during one of the most famous Red Sox Yankees brawls of all time, he ended up being in the game and in the fray, not as a member of the Red Sox, but as a member of the New York Yankees. So those are two interesting Jerry Moses' stories, and needless to say, Jerry was a good friend. He died a few years back, and I miss him terribly. He was a good guy.
Yeah, we all do. Great guy. Great guy.
Thanks, Buck.
Buck, thanks a lot. Steve Buckley
Great job, friend.
of The Athletic, good friend of ours, good friend of everybody. And go August 24th, St. Peter's field over in Cambridge. It's a great. If you love baseball, you're going to love this night. So
And by the way, real quick, I have a photo of my office, and the caption is 4 guys who combined to win 350 major league games. And it's a picture of Clemens in his windup, and under his arm along the fence, it's Mike Lynch, Dan Shaughnessy, and Steve Buckley just leaning against the fence, watching it like that. I'll send it to you. It's a hilarious photo.
Oh, good. Please do.
All right.
Please do.
All right, Steve. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
See you guys.
See you next week. Bye-bye.